The turbulence hit without warning. Sarah Mitchell's stomach lurched as Delta Flight 1247 dropped what felt like 1,000 feet in 3 seconds. Her orange juice. The flight attendant had brought it with a wink, and an extra pack of cookies because Sarah was flying alone, launched from the tray table and splattered across the seat in front of her. The woman in 11F screamed. Somewhere behind Sarah, a man was praying loudly in Spanish. The overhead bins rattled like they might burst open. 7 years old, and Sarah had never been more terrified in her life. Seat 12F suddenly felt like the loneliest place in the world. Her mother was back in Atlanta, probably at work at the hospital by now, unaware that her daughter's plane was falling from the sky. Her father, the reason for this trip, the first time seeing him since the divorce 6 months ago, was waiting in San Diego, 3,000 miles and 30,000 feet away. The Boeing 737 shuddered again. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged urgently, though everyone was already strapped in, knuckles white on armrests. Sarah's fingers found the small stuffed rabbit in her backpack, Mr. Whiskers, who had traveled with her since she was 3. She squeezed it hard. Then something changed. Through the chaos, a voice cut across the intercom, calm, steady, almost bored. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rodriguez. We've encountered some unexpected rough air. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Flight attendants, take your seats immediately." The voice didn't sound scared. It sounded professional, like this was just another Tuesday. Sarah looked up and saw the flight attendant. Her name tag said Janet. Moving down the aisle despite the turbulence, checking seatbelts, her face composed into a reassuring smile. When she reached Sarah's row, she knelt down, one hand bracing against the seat. "Hey there, sweetheart, you doing okay?" Janet's voice was gentle but steady. Sarah wanted to lie, to be brave, but tears were already tracking down her cheeks. "I'm scared." "I know, honey, but you know what? See that door up there?" Janet pointed toward the cockpit. "Behind that door are 2 pilots, Captain Rodriguez and First Officer Chen. They've flown through weather way worse than this. They've got this. We're going to be just fine." The plane dropped again and Janet grabbed the seat to steady herself, but she never stopped smiling. "What's your name?" "Sarah." "Well, Sarah, I've been flying for 12 years and I've never, not once, seen our pilots let anything bad happen. They're the best in the business. You trust me." Sarah nodded, still clutching Mr. Whiskers. "Good girl." Janet patted her hand and moved toward her jump seat, walking like she was on solid ground instead of a bucking airplane. The turbulence continued for another 10 minutes, the longest 10 minutes of Sarah's life. But something had shifted. She stopped focusing on the shaking, the screams, the fear. Instead, she watched Janet, who sat calmly in her jump seat, occasionally making eye contact with passengers and nodding reassuringly. She noticed how the other flight attendants mirrored Janet's composure. And then, through a gap in the curtain, Sarah saw something that would change her life. The cockpit door had swung partially open, probably not latched correctly during the emergency. For just a few seconds, Sarah could see inside. 2 figures in white shirts with shoulder boards, sitting side by side in front of a wall of instruments and switches. Their hands moved across controls with practiced precision. One was speaking into a radio headset, voice measured and calm. The other was making notes on a clipboard, like they were doing homework instead of fighting to keep a plane in the air. They weren't panicking, they were working. The plane leveled out, the shaking stopped. The fastened seatbelt sign dinged off. Captain Rodriguez's voice returned. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've cleared the rough air. I apologize for the bumpy ride. We'll be beginning our descent into San Diego in about 20 minutes. Flight attendants, you're free to move about the cabin." Just like that, it was over. Passengers laughed with relief. The man who'd been praying loudly shouted "Gracias a Dios." Janet came by with napkins to clean up Sarah's spilled juice, chatting cheerfully like nothing had happened. But Sarah couldn't stop thinking about those 2 figures in the cockpit, the way their hands had moved, the calm in their voices. the absolute confidence that they would get everyone safely to the ground. San Diego International Airport smelled like jet fuel and salt air. Sarah walked down the jetway on shaky legs, Mr. Whiskers tucked under one arm, her small rolling suitcase bumping behind her. In the terminal, she spotted her father immediately. Staff Sergeant Robert Mitchell stood near the gate in his Air Force dress blues, the uniform stiff and formal, his face uncertain. "Hey, kiddo." He bent down awkwardly for a hug. Sarah crashed into him, suddenly sobbing, not from the turbulence but from relief, from missing him, from the confusion of divorce and split homes and not understanding why families broke apart. "Whoa, hey, it's okay, you made it." Her father's voice was gruff but gentle. "Rough flight." Sarah nodded into his shoulder, unable to speak. "Come on, let's get out of here. I've got 2 weeks with you and I'm going to make them count." The base housing at Miramar looked nothing like home. Everything was beige and square, military precise. Her father's apartment, he called it the bachelor pad with a forced laugh, had almost no furniture. No pictures on the walls. A TV, a couch, and in the spare bedroom that would be Sarah's for the next 2 weeks, an air mattress and a lamp. "I know it's not much," her father said, setting her suitcase down. "But tomorrow I'll show you something cool. Deal?" The next morning, Staff Sergeant Mitchell drove them onto Miramar Air Base in his beat-up Honda Civic. He badged them through the gate, and suddenly they were in a different world. Massive hangars lined the roads. Uniformed personnel walked with purpose. And everywhere, there were jets. "This is where I work," her father explained as they parked near the flight line. "I'm a crew chief. I maintain the birds, make sure they're ready to fly." Sarah pressed her face against the car window. On the tarmac, an F-18 Hornet sat like a sleeping predator, its gray paint scheme broken up by warning stencils and insignia. Crew members swarmed around it, performing pre-flight checks. "Can we get closer?" Sarah whispered. Her father smiled, the first real smile she'd seen since the divorce. "Yeah, kiddo, we can get closer." They walked to the fence line at the edge of the flight line, where a handful of other families and off-duty personnel gathered to watch the afternoon launches. Sarah's hands found the chain-link fence, gripping tight, just like she'd gripped the armrest on Flight 1247. And then it happened. An F-18 taxied onto the runway, afterburners glowing blue-hot even in the afternoon sun. The engine noise was incredible, a thunder that Sarah felt in her chest, in her bones. The jet paused at the end of the runway, then released its brakes. Afterburners ignited to full power, twin cones of fire erupting from the tail. The Hornet rocketed down the runway and into the sky, climbing almost vertical, disappearing into the California blue. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't look away. Another jet followed, then another, each one a perfect demonstration of power, precision, and control. "Dad," Sarah said quietly, not taking her eyes off the sky, "who flies those?" Her father's laugh was bitter. He didn't mean it to be, but Sarah heard it anyway. "Pilots, kiddo, naval aviators, best of the best." "Can I be one?" The silence stretched too long. Sarah finally looked up at her father, who was staring at the ground, jaw tight. "Sarah, they don't let girls fly fighters." "Why not?" "Because," he struggled for words, "because that's just how it is. The military has rules. Women can serve, but not in combat roles, not in fighters." "But why?" Sarah pressed, her voice rising. "Those pilots on my plane yesterday, they saved everyone. If someone's good enough, why does it matter if they're a girl?" Her father knelt down to her level, his eyes sad. "Kiddo, I'm just telling you how the world works. You're smart, you're tough. You could be a military nurse, work on base, maybe fly transport planes someday if the rules change. But fighters," he shook his head, "that's not for girls, I'm sorry." Sarah turned back to the fence, watching another jet scream into the sky. She didn't argue, she didn't cry. She just made a promise to herself, one that a 7-year-old couldn't possibly understand the weight of, but one that would consume the next 20 years of her life. That's not how it's going to be. That night, lying on the air mattress in her father's spare room, listening to the distant roar of jets on night training runs, Sarah closed her eyes and imagined herself in the cockpit. Hands steady on the controls, voice calm on the radio, making the impossible look easy. Just like the pilots who saved Flight 1247. Just like the pilots who commanded the sky over Miramar. C-12F had been her beginning. But it wouldn't be her ending. 8 years later, Sarah Mitchell sat in a plastic chair outside Mrs. Henderson's office, holding a glossy brochure that might as well have been a grenade. The United States Air Force Academy stared back at her from the cover, cadets in perfect formation, the Rocky Mountains rising behind them, the words integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do printed in bold letters. Her hands were sweating. "Sarah, come on in, honey." Mrs. Henderson's voice was syrupy sweet, the same tone she used when delivering bad news gently. The guidance counselor's office smelled like lavender air freshener and crushed dreams. Certificates covered the walls. Counselor of the Year 2003, Outstanding Service Award, but Sarah noticed none of them mentioned actually getting kids into competitive schools. Sarah sat down, placing the brochure on the desk between them. Mrs. Henderson glanced at it and sighed. "The Air Force Academy. Sarah, sweetheart, we need to be realistic here. My GPA is 3.9. I'm ranked 7th in my class. I'm captain of the track team, president of the math club, and I know your credentials, honey. You're a bright girl, but the academy." Mrs. Henderson leaned forward, her expression pitying. "That's for, well, different kinds of students, different kinds of girls. Have you thought about UGA? They have an excellent nursing program. Or maybe Georgia Southern. You could do ROTC there, get your officer commission the traditional way, much less pressure." Sarah's jaw tightened. "I don't want to be a nurse. I want to be a pilot." "A pilot?" Mrs. Henderson said it like Sarah had announced she wanted to be an astronaut or a unicorn. "Sarah, even if you got into the academy, and that's a big if, pilot slots are incredibly competitive, and for women there are limitations." "There are no limitations." Sarah's voice was cold. "Women have been flying combat aircraft since 1993. Lieutenant Colonel Martha McSally flew A-10s in combat. Major Nicole Malachowski flies with the Thunderbirds. I've done my research, Mrs. Henderson." The counselor sat back, her sympathetic mask slipping slightly. "Your research doesn't change the reality of your situation. Your mother works 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. You're from a single-parent home in a trailer park. The academy looks for well-rounded candidates, students with connections, with resources for extracurriculars, with money," Sarah finished. "Is that what you're saying, that I'm not good enough because we're poor?" "I'm saying you should consider your options carefully. There are schools that would be thrilled to have you, schools where you'd fit in better, where you wouldn't be fighting an uphill battle every single day." Mrs. Henderson pushed a pamphlet across the desk. "Gordon State College has a wonderful—" Sarah stood up so fast her chair scraped against the linoleum. "Thank you for your time, Mrs. Henderson." "Sarah, wait." But Sarah was already walking out, the academy brochure clutched in her fist, tears threatening to spill over. She made it to the girls' bathroom before the dam broke. Home was a single-wide trailer in Pine Meadows Mobile Home Park, which had neither pines nor meadows, just rows of aging trailers, pickup trucks on blocks, and the constant smell of someone's barbecue. Sarah's mother, Linda, wouldn't be back from her shift at Memorial Hospital until after 11 p.m. Her second job, cleaning offices downtown, started at midnight. Sarah sat at the wobbly kitchen table, her laptop open to the Air Force Academy application portal. 70% complete. The deadline was in 3 days. She still needed 2 teacher recommendations, a physical fitness assessment, and a congressional nomination, which required a separate application, interview, and probably a miracle. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father, the first in 3 months. Heard you're applying to the academy. Good luck with that. No encouragement, no offer to help, just casual dismissal wrapped in 5 words. Sarah slammed the laptop shut and walked outside. The November air was crisp, carrying the sound of distant traffic from I-75. She sat on the concrete steps. One was cracked, had been for years, and pulled her knees to her chest. 12 years old, she'd asked her father during a rare visit, "Did you ever want to be a pilot?" He'd laughed, "Me? Nah, I'm a wrench turner, kiddo. I fix the birds, other people fly them. Know your place, do your job, collect your paycheck. That's life." Know your place. That phrase had haunted Sarah ever since. Everyone seemed to have ideas about where she belonged. Mrs. Henderson, her father, even her mother, who loved her fiercely but worried constantly about realistic expectations. No one seemed to think her place was in a cockpit. The next day after ROTC, Master Sergeant Terrence Williams found Sarah behind the equipment shed, sitting on an overturned crate, crying into her hands. Williams was a Vietnam vet who'd flown helicopters in combat and lost his left leg below the knee to an RPG in 1971. He now taught ROTC at Hartwell High School, and he didn't tolerate excuses, self-pity, or quitting. "Mitchell, what's the situation?" His voice was gruff but not unkind. Sarah wiped her face quickly. "Nothing, Master Sergeant, just nothing." Williams sat down on another crate with a grunt, his prosthetic leg extending stiffly. "Try again. And this time don't insult my intelligence." The whole story came pouring out. Mrs. Henderson's dismissal, the incomplete application, her father's text, her mother's exhausted worry, the teacher who'd said she'd write a recommendation but kept putting it off, the congressional nomination interview she'd bombed because she'd been so nervous she could barely speak. Williams listened without interrupting. When Sarah finally ran out of words, he was quiet for a long moment. "You remember what seat you were in when you decided to do this?" he finally asked. Sarah blinked, confused. "What?" "On that plane when you were 7, the one that hit the turbulence and made you want to fly. What seat?" 12F. I was in seat 12F. Williams nodded. "And where are the pilots?" "The cockpit, the front." "That's right, the front. You know what's between seat 12F and the front of that plane, Mitchell?" The rest of the passenger cabin." "About 150 feet of people telling you where you belong, telling you to stay seated, telling you it's safer back there, easier back there, more comfortable back there." Williams leaned forward. "But you know what else is between 12F and the front?" Sarah shook her head. "A door, and it ain't locked. It never was. The only thing keeping you in seat 12F is you deciding to stay there." He stood up, using his cane for balance. "Now stop crying and finish that damn application. You've got 72 hours. "But the recommendations." "I'll write one, and I'll talk to Colonel Morrison from the Army Reserve. He'll write the second. You worry about everything else. And Mitchell," he looked down at her, his expression fierce, "I flew in Vietnam with a black pilot named James who wasn't supposed to be there because of the color of his skin. I flew with a door gunner named Martinez who wasn't supposed to be there because he couldn't speak English without an accent. They were 2 of the finest warriors I ever served with. You think I give a damn what Mrs. Henderson thinks about who belongs at the academy?" Sarah stood up, wiping her eyes. "No, Master Sergeant." "Damn right, now move out." 72 hours later, at 11:47 p.m. on December 1, 2005, Sarah Mitchell clicked Submit Application on the Air Force Academy portal. Her essay, the one about the little girl in seat 12F who learned that calm competence mattered more than fear, had been written and rewritten 17 times. Master Sergeant Williams had delivered both recommendation letters personally. Her physical fitness scores were in the top 10% nationally. She closed the laptop and sat in the dark trailer, listening to her mother's soft snoring from the bedroom. Outside, a dog barked. A car with a broken muffler rumbled past. Sarah whispered into the darkness, "I did it." The thick envelope arrived on a Tuesday in April. Sarah's mother called her at school, crying so hard she could barely speak. "Baby, baby, there's a letter. From Colorado, it's thick." Sarah got permission to leave early, drove home in her beat-up Toyota Corolla doing 20 over the speed limit, burst through the trailer door. The envelope sat on the kitchen table like a holy relic. Her mother stood beside it, still in her hospital scrubs, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't open it. I wanted you to." Sarah's hands shook as she tore it open. "Dear Miss Mitchell, congratulations. On behalf of the United States Air Force Academy." The rest of the words blurred. Sarah sat down hard, the letter clutched to her chest, and sobbed. Her mother wrapped her in a hug. "My baby, my brilliant baby, you did it." That night Sarah called her father. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice wary. "Yeah. Dad, I got in. The Air Force Academy accepted me." Silent, long enough that Sarah thought he'd hung up. "Then you really did it," his voice cracked. "Sarah, I didn't think. I'm proud of you, kiddo. I'm so proud of you." It was the first time Sarah could remember her father saying those words. June 28, 2005. In-processing day at the United States Air Force Academy. Sarah stepped off the bus at Doolittle Hall, carrying a single duffel bag packed according to the strict list provided. 150 other appointees milled around nervously, young men and women from every state, every background, every dream converging on one impossible goal. An upperclassman in service dress stood at the entrance, clipboard in hand, scanning the crowd with predatory eyes. Sarah approached. "Name," he barked. "Basic Cadet Sarah Mitchell, sir." He looked her up and down, a smirk playing at his lips. "Mitchell, you lost, sweetheart. The nursing school is in Colorado Springs, about 10 miles south." Every head turned. Sarah felt 100 pairs of eyes on her. She met the upperclassman's gaze and didn't blink. "No, sir. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "We'll see about that, Basic." He checked her name off. "Welcome to hell, Mitchell. You've got about 60 seconds before it officially starts. Enjoy them." Sarah walked through the doors of Doolittle Hall, her heart pounding, her hands steady. C-12F was 1,000 miles and a lifetime behind her. The cockpit was still 1,000 miles ahead. But she was moving forward. The first 40 days nearly destroyed her. Basic cadet training began at 500 hours on June 29, 2005, when upperclassmen stormed into Sarah's dorm room screaming, banging trash can lids together, dumping her mattress onto the floor with her still in it. "You've got 90 seconds to be in the hallway in your PT gear, Basic. Move." Sarah scrambled, disoriented, terrified. In the hallway she fell into formation with her flight, 30 other basics, all wide-eyed and shaking. An upperclassman, a second-class cadet named Ramirez, walked the line like a shark circling prey. "You are no longer civilians. You are no longer individuals. You are nothing. For the next 6 weeks you will eat, sleep, breathe, and bleed Air Force Blue. Half of you won't make it. Let's find out which half." The days blurred into a nightmare of push-ups, running, inspections, and constant screaming. Sarah learned to stand at attention for hours, learned to recite Air Force knowledge while doing flutter kicks until her abs burned, learned to make her bed so tight a quarter would bounce off it, and if it didn't, she'd remake it 10 times until it did. But Sarah wasn't just under scrutiny, she was under a microscope. During a morning run on day 5, Sarah overheard 2 upperclassmen jogging behind the formation. $10 says the girl from Georgia quits by parents' weekend. Nah, man, she won't even make it a week. Did you see her during the obstacle course, struggling on the rope climb? She's only here because of diversity quotas. The academy has to hit their numbers. Sarah ran faster, her legs burning, lungs screaming. She didn't quit that day, or the next, or the one after that. Every push-up was counted twice when she did them. Every uniform inspection found faults that didn't exist. When her flight marched, the cadre watched her specifically, waiting for her to fall out of step. She couldn't just be good, she had to be flawless, and even flawless wasn't always enough. Jessica Torres, her roommate from Montana, a cheerful girl who'd been a rodeo champion and valedictorian, broke first. On day 17, Sarah woke up to find Jessica's bed stripped, her belongings gone. A note on the desk, "I'm sorry, I can't do this." "Good luck, Sarah, you're stronger than me." Sarah sat on her perfectly made bed, staring at the empty side of the room, and allowed herself exactly 3 minutes to feel the loneliness. To acknowledge that she wanted to quit too, that every muscle ached, that the upperclassmen were relentless, that she missed her mother. Then she washed her face, put on her uniform, and reported for morning formation. By Parents' Weekend on day 28, Sarah's flight had lost 7 of its original 30 members. Sarah was still there, harder now, leaner, her eyes carrying a steel that hadn't existed 6 weeks ago. Her mother came, bringing homemade cookies that Sarah wasn't allowed to eat yet. Linda Mitchell looked at her daughter, this stranger in a uniform with perfect posture and clipped responses, and started crying. "Baby, are you okay? You look so different." Sarah wanted to collapse into her mother's arms. Instead, she stood at parade rest. "I'm fine, ma'am. It's challenging, but I'm adapting." Her father didn't come. He'd sent a card, "Stick with it, Dad." 4 words, Sarah kept it anyway. The boxing trials came during the spring semester of her sophomore year. The academy required all cadets to complete a semester of boxing, a tradition designed to build warrior spirit, aggression, and the ability to take a hit. Sarah had been dreading it. She was 56 and 135 pounds. Most of the male cadets had 50 to 70 pounds on her. The instructor, a grizzled major named Kowalski who'd boxed for Army before commissioning into the Air Force, paired Sarah against Cadet First Class Derek Thompson, 62, 195 pounds, a linebacker on the academy football team. In the locker room beforehand, Sarah heard Thompson joking with his friends. "Coach is throwing me a softball today. Probably told him to go easy on the girl." Sarah wrapped her hands slowly, methodically, remembering something her father had taught her during one of his better weekends, when she was 12, and he decided she should know how to defend herself. "Sarah, you'll never win a fair fight against someone bigger, so don't fight fair, be faster, be smarter, and hit first, hit hard, and don't stop until they stop." The gym filled with spectators, boxing days were popular. Sarah stepped into the ring, mouthguard in, headgear secured. Across from her, Thompson bounced on his toes, grinning. The bell rang. Thompson came forward lazy and overconfident, guard low, expecting Sarah to back up. Instead, she stepped into range and threw a jab-cross combination that snapped his head back. Thompson blinked, surprised. The gym got quiet. "Okay then." Thompson set his stance properly now, game face on. They circled. Thompson threw a jab. Sarah slipped it, countered with a hook to the body that made him grunt. He threw a heavy right hand, the kind that would end the fight if it landed. Sarah ducked under it, stepped inside, and threw an uppercut with every ounce of strength in her legs and core. The sound of cartilage breaking echoed through the gym. Thompson's nose exploded in a spray of blood. He staggered back, guard dropping, and Sarah threw a straight right that put him on the canvas. The referee stopped the fight. Medical personnel rushed in. The gym was completely silent. Major Kowalski approached Sarah, who stood in her corner, chest heaving, knuckles bloody. "Mitchell, my office, now." Sarah's stomach dropped. She just assaulted an upperclassman. She was finished. In Kowalski's office, she stood at attention, waiting for the hammer to fall. Kowalski leaned against his desk, arms crossed. "That was the cleanest counterpunching I've seen from a cadet in 5 years. He almost smiled. "Thompson outweighed you by 60 pounds and you put him down in 90 seconds. Where'd you learn to box?" My father taught me basics, sir. The rest I figured out. Well, you figured it out right. You're not in trouble, Mitchell. That's what boxing is, controlled aggression. Thompson underestimated you. That's on him. Kowalski's expression turned serious. But you need to understand something. You just embarrassed a football star in front of half the wing. Some people are going to respect you for it. Others are going to resent you. Can you handle that? Sarah met his eyes. I can handle it, sir. Good, dismissed. Thompson never bothered her again, and when she walked through the hallways, some cadets looked away. But others, especially the female cadets, nodded with new respect. The real test came during flight screening the following summer. Every Academy cadet who wanted a pilot slot had to complete a flight evaluation in a Cessna 172, basic flying skills that determined whether you had the aptitude to continue to real pilot training. Sarah had waited 3 years for this moment. Her assigned instructor was a civilian contractor named Mr. Hewitt, a retired Air Force pilot who made no secret of his opinions. During the pre-flight brief, he looked at her paperwork and frowned. Sarah Mitchell, you want to fly fighters? Yes, sir. He said nothing else. The flights went poorly from the start. Sarah flew well, she knew she did, but Hewitt's feedback was constant criticism. Too aggressive on the controls, not aggressive enough, poor situational awareness, sloppy radio work. Every flight ended with a litany of failures that didn't match Sarah's performance. The final evaluation flight was a crosswind landing, tricky, but not impossible. Sarah set up the approach perfectly, crabbing into the wind, touchdown smooth despite the gusty conditions. Hewitt marked his clipboard. Inadequate crosswind technique, unsafe landing, you fail. Sarah's hands went numb on the controls. Sir, that was a good landing. I maintained centerline corrected for wind drift and... Are you arguing with your instructor, cadet? No, sir, but... You failed, that's final. You can reapply next year, but I don't recommend it. Some people aren't cut out for flying. He climbed out of the aircraft. Sarah sat in the cockpit, staring at the controls, her dream dying in front of her. Without passing flight screening, she couldn't get a pilot slot. Without a pilot slot, everything, the academy, the struggle, the pain, was for nothing. That night she called Master Sergeant Williams. He listened to the whole story. So what are you going to do, Mitchell? I don't know. If I challenge the evaluation, I'm accusing him of bias. That could make everything worse. And if you don't challenge it, I lose everything. Williams was quiet for a moment. You remember seat 12F? Despite everything, Sarah smiled slightly. Yeah, Master Sergeant, I remember. Then you know what you have to do. Fight. You didn't come this far to let some bitter old pilot end your dream. The reevaluation request went through official channels. It required statements, justification, and approval from the department head. When it was finally granted, Sarah learned she'd be evaluated by Major Patricia Richardson, known throughout the academy as the hardest evaluator in the program, a former F-16 pilot who'd flown in Desert Storm and accepted no excuses. The night before the flight, Sarah didn't sleep. She studied procedures, chair-flew the maneuvers in her dorm room, and prayed to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. 600 hours. Sarah met Major Richardson at the flight line. Richardson looked at Sarah's file. I've read the situation, Cadet Mitchell. I'm going to evaluate you fairly, which means I'm going to be harder on you than anyone else today. If you pass, it's because you earned it beyond any doubt. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Then let's fly. It was the perfect flight of Sarah's life. Every maneuver executed precisely. Every radio call professional. The crosswind landing, the same test she'd failed, was textbook perfect. After shutdown, Richardson filled out the evaluation in silence. Sarah's heart hammered. Finally, Richardson looked up. 98%. That's the highest score I've given in 2 years. She extended her hand. "Welcome to pilot training, Cadet Mitchell. Don't make me regret this." Sarah shook her hand, fighting tears. "I won't, ma'am, I promise." May 28, 2009, Graduation Day. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell stood in Falcon Stadium in her dress blues, diploma in hand, silver bars on her shoulders. Distinguished graduate in astronautical engineering. Pilot training assignment. Laughlin Air Force Base, Texas. Fighter track. Her mother sobbed in the stands. Her father, who'd actually shown up, saluted her awkwardly when she walked past. In her assignment folder, a handwritten note was clipped to the orders. "Lt. Mitchell, you wanted the impossible. Now comes the hard part. The T-38 doesn't care about your academy struggles. It only cares whether you can fly. Good luck. You'll need it. Madge Richardson." Sarah looked up at the F-16 performing a flyover, its afterburner trail cutting across the Colorado sky. C-12F felt like a lifetime ago. The real journey was just beginning. Laughlin Air Force Base, Texas, August 2010. The thermometer on the flight line read 107 degrees. Heat shimmered off the tarmac in waves, making the T-38 talons look like silver mirages. Second Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell stood in her flight suit, sweat already soaking through the fabric, staring at the sleek supersonic trainer that would determine her future. 6 months into specialized undergraduate pilot training, and Sarah was learning a brutal truth. The academy had been the easy part. Flying was harder than anything she'd ever done. The T-38 was unforgiving, a 1960s-era rocket with wings that rewarded precision and punished hesitation. Every day was a test. Every flight was graded. Washout rates hovered around 30%, and the students who survived lived in a constant state of stress, exhaustion, and caffeinated desperation. Sarah was ranked 5th in her class of 24. Good, but not good enough. Fighter slots went to the top 3, maybe top 5 if they were lucky. Every sortie mattered. Every mistake was noted. Her flight commander, Captain Mike "Torch" Brennan, had made his opinion clear during her initial brief. "Lieutenant Mitchell, I don't care what you did at the academy. Here, you're just another student pilot. You get no special treatment, no extra consideration. Fly well or wash out. Those are your options." Sarah had nodded. "Understood, sir." What Torch didn't say, but what hung in the air like smoke, was that he'd already decided she'd wash out. He was just waiting for her to prove him right. The mission brief was straightforward. Basic fighter maneuvers against an aggressor pilot. 1 versus 1 air combat, simulated weapons, no safety net except altitude restrictions and common sense. Sarah's opponent was Captain Rick "Viper" Morrison, a former F-15 pilot with over 2,000 flight hours who'd made student pilots look like children for the past 3 years. In the squadron briefing room, Viper grinned at Sarah. "Try to make it interesting, Mitchell. Last student I flew against lasted about 45 seconds before I had him in a phone booth he couldn't get out of." Sarah's classmate, First Lieutenant Kevin Martinez, leaned over and whispered, "Don't let him psych you out. He does this to everyone." "I'm not psyched out," Sarah whispered back, though her hands were shaking slightly. Kevin, a former enlisted crew chief who'd earned his commission the hard way, had become Sarah's closest friend in training. He was the only one who didn't treat her differently, didn't care that she was one of 3 women in their class. "You got this, Mitchell. Fly your plan." At 15,000 feet over West Texas, Sarah and Viper started their engagement neutral, side by side, half a mile apart. On the radio call "Fights on," they'd turn into each other and the dance would begin. Sarah's plan was simple: force Viper into a 2-circle fight where her smaller turn radius might give her an advantage. The T-38 was lighter, more nimble. If she could keep the fight slow and tight, she had a chance. "Bandits check in," the controller called. "Viper's up," Morrison responded. 12, Sarah said, using the tactical call sign assigned to her for the mission, a reference to her student number. "Fight's on," Both jets turned hard into each other. Sarah pulled 6GS, grunting against the pressure, vision tunneling slightly. Viper's jet passed canopy to canopy, maybe 500 feet away. They merged and the real fight began. Sarah reversed hard, trying to get angles. Viper was already there, sliding behind her, calling Viper's defensive, even though he wasn't. It was a psychological ploy. Sarah broke hard left, then right, trying to deny him a shot. "You're in the phone booth 12, Viper called cheerfully. "Might as well reset." Sarah's altimeter showed 12,000 feet. She was running out of altitude and options. Viper was better, more experienced in winning. Then Sarah remembered something she'd read in a fighter tactics manual. Something crazy. Something that broke all the rules of basic student flying. She pulled into a vertical climb, max afterburner, trading speed for altitude. The jet climbed like a homesick angel straight up. Viper followed, but Sarah had timed it perfectly. At the apex of the climb, her airspeed bleeding off to near stall, she snap-rolled the aircraft, revering direction completely. She fell like a stone, directly onto Viper's 6 o'clock. In the tower, controllers watched in stunned silence. Sarah's HUD showed Viper centered in range. "Guns, guns, guns," she called calmly, simulating a kill shot. The radio was silent for 3 full seconds. Then Viper's voice, laughing incredulously, "12, did you just use a Cobra maneuver on me?" Sarah keyed her mic, adrenaline singing in her veins. "12 high, sir, and yes, I did." The radio crackled with Torch's voice from the ground. "Both aircraft, knock it off, return to base. Mitchell, we need to debrief that, whatever that was." The debrief was tense. Torch stood at the front of the room, arms crossed, face unreadable. Viper sat off to the side, still grinning. Sarah's classmates packed the room. Debriefs were public, lessons for everyone. "Lieutenant Mitchell," Torch began, "that maneuver you executed, the high-angle climb with the snap reversal, where did you learn that?" "I read about it, sir. Soviet pilots used variations of it, the Pugachev Cobra. I adapted it for the engagement profile." "You adapted a maneuver meant for a completely different aircraft, in a training environment, without clearing it with your instructor first." Torch's voice was flat. Sarah's stomach sank. She'd screwed up, shown off, violated procedures. "Yes, sir." Torch looked at Viper. "Captain Morrison, your assessment." Viper stood up, still smiling. "Sir, that was the ballsiest," he glanced at Sarah, "gutsiest flying I've seen from a student in 3 years. Dangerous. Hell yeah, effective. She smoked me. If this was combat and she was flying a Raptor or an Eagle, I'd be dead." He looked at Sarah. 12 high, that call sign fits. High risk, high reward flying. It's either going to make you a legendary fighter pilot or get you killed. Maybe both." The room erupted in nervous laughter. Sarah felt her face flush. Torch's expression finally cracked into something that might have been a smile. "Mitchell, don't ever pull an unauthorized maneuver like that again without briefing it first." "But," he paused, "good kill, dismissed." From that day forward, Sarah was 12 high. Not just a student number, a call sign that captured everything she was. The girl from seat 12F who'd climbed high enough to touch the impossible. 3 weeks later, Kevin Martinez died. The bird strike happened on takeoff, a flock of geese, wrong place, wrong time. Kevin's T-38 ingested one into the right engine at 200 knots, catastrophic failure. He tried to eject, but the sequence malfunctioned. The jet augured in 2 miles from the runway. Sarah was in the tower when it happened, watching Kevin's flight taxi out. She heard the explosion, saw the fireball, felt her knees buckle. The funeral was held at the base chapel. Kevin's mother, a tiny woman who'd raised 5 kids alone after her husband died, collapsed at the graveside. Sarah stood in her dress blues, tears streaming down her face, watching them fold the flag. That night she sat in her apartment staring at her logbook. 147 flight hours logged. Kevin had 132. He'd never get another. Flying wasn't a game. It wasn't about ego or proving people wrong. It was the most dangerous job in the world, even in training, even in peacetime. The margin for error was zero. One mistake, one mechanical failure, one flock of birds, and you were gone. Sarah opened her logbook and wrote on the dedication page, "For Kevin, fly high, brother." Then she went to bed, set her alarm for 4:30, and prepared for the next flight. Because that's what fighter pilots did. They mourned, they learned, they flew again. Assignment night, December 2010. The auditorium buzzed with nervous energy as the 20 surviving students from Sarah's class sat in dress blues, waiting to learn their fates. Aircraft assignments were determined by class ranking and availability. Fighters, bombers, tankers, transports, each representing different futures. The commander read names alphabetically. Lieutenant Anderson, F-16 Viper Luke AFB, Arizona. Applause. Anderson pumped his fist. Lieutenant Chen, F-15 E Strike Eagle, Seymour Johnson AFB, North Carolina. More applause. Lieutenant Martinez, the commander paused, his voice catching. Kevin's name still on the roster. The room went silent. Honored posthumously, fighter pilot, forever. Everyone stood, saluted, sat back down in silence. Lieutenant Mitchell. Sarah's heart stopped. The screen behind the commander flickered. An image appeared. The F-22 Raptor, angular and lethal, America's premier air superiority fighter. F-22A Raptor, Tyndall AFB, Florida. The room exploded. F-22 assignments were the rarest in the Air Force, only 60 pilots selected per year from the entire fighter community. Sarah had just won the lottery. Her classmates mobbed her, genuine congratulations mixed with stunned disbelief. Even Torch approached, extending his hand. "I was wrong about you, Mitchell. Don't make me look bad in the Raptor." Sarah shook his hand. "I won't, sir." But Torch leaned in closer, voice low. "Listen to me. The Raptor community doesn't like attention. They don't like publicity. And you, whether you want it or not, bring both. Walk in there humble. Let your flying speak, because they will test you in ways that make this place look like kindergarten." Tyndall AFB, Florida, March 2011. Sarah stood on the ramp, staring at her assigned F-22. Tail number 54094. Sleek, angular, beautiful, and absolutely terrifying. $200 million of stealth technology. The most advanced fighter jet ever built. The squadron commander, Lieutenant Colonel James Brick Masterson, appeared beside her. "Lieutenant Mitchell, welcome to the 43rd. I understand you've got quite a reputation. Academy distinguished grad, top of your pilot training class, call sign that's already making the rounds." "Yes, sir." Brick's eyes were hard. "Here's what I care about, Lieutenant. Can you fly the Raptor? Can you employ it in combat? Can you lead a force ship into contested airspace and bring everyone home? Everything else is noise." Sarah met his gaze. "I can do all of that, sir." "We'll see." Brick handed her a checklist. "Your first flight is tomorrow, 600. The Raptor will humble you, Mitchell. It humbles everyone. The question is whether you'll have the humility to learn from it." That night, Sarah studied procedures until her eyes burned. She thought about Kevin, about Seat 12F, about every person who'd said she couldn't. Tomorrow she'd fly the Raptor. And one way or another, she'd prove she belonged. The F-22 Raptor sat on the ramp at dawn like a sleeping predator. Tail number 54094 gleamed in the early light, angular, aggressive, impossibly beautiful. Sarah walked her pre-flight inspection with trembling hands, touching the jet's skin like it might bite. It probably would. First time's always intimidating. The voice belonged to her instructor pilot, Major Rick "Brick" Henderson, a 15-year fighter pilot with 3,000 hours who'd flown combat in 3 different aircraft. He appeared beside her carrying 2 helmets. "The Raptor's different from anything you've flown. Faster, more responsive, more lethal. also more willing to kill you if you're sloppy. Sarah swallowed hard. Yes, sir. You've studied the technical orders. Memorized them, sir. Good, because at 40,000 feet going Mach 1.5 you won't have time to look anything up. Brick handed her a helmet. Today's simple, basic handling, get a feel for the jet. We'll stay subsonic, do some turns, practice communication. The Raptor talks different than the T-38. You need to learn its language. 30 minutes later, Sarah sat in the cockpit surrounded by the most advanced technology ever put in a fighter jet. Helmet-mounted display, touchscreen panels, sensor fusion that combined radar, infrared, and electronic warfare into a single picture. The canopy closed with a hydraulic hiss, sealing her in. 12 high, how do you hear? Brick's voice crackled in her headset. He was flying chase in an F-16, monitoring her first flight. Loud and clear, sir. Good, run your checklists, take your time, the jet will wait. Sarah's hands moved through the startup sequence, practiced 100 times in the simulator, but completely different in the real aircraft. Engines spooled up with a sound like tearing silk. The jet trembled, alive, eager. Tower cleared her for takeoff. Sarah taxied onto runway 33, took one deep breath, and advanced the throttles. The F-22 leaped forward like it had been shot from a cannon. Acceleration slammed her back into the seat, nothing like the T-38, nothing like anything she'd ever experienced. At 150 knots she rotated, and the jet practically jumped into the air. 12's airborne, she called, voice tight. Copy, level at 10,000, will run some turns. Sarah climbed, getting a feel for the controls. The jet was twitchy, hyper-responsive to every input. In the T-38, you moved the stick and the jet responded. In the Raptor, you thought about moving the stick and the jet responded. Okay, 12, let's try a level turn. 30 degrees of bank, maintain altitude. Sarah rolled into the turn smoothly, too smoothly. The jet snapped into the bank angle like a spring releasing. She overcorrected. The nose pitched up sharply. Altitude began increasing. She pushed forward on the stick. Too much. The nose dropped. G-forces fluctuated wildly. 12, you're porpoising. Relax, small inputs. The jet doesn't need much. Sarah tried to settle it, but the oscillations worsened. The jet pitched up, then down, then up again, a classic pilot-induced oscillation. Her breathing quickened. Sweat poured down her face. For 3 terrifying seconds she wasn't flying the jet was flying her. 12, hands off the stick, let it stabilize. Sarah released the stick. The jet's flight control system damped out the oscillations, leveling itself. Her heart hammered against her ribs. You good? Brick's voice was calm, professional. Yes, sir, I'm good. Okay, let's try that again. Remember, this isn't a T-38. The Raptor doesn't want to be manhandled. Think of it like directing a thought, subtle, precise. They spent the next 40 minutes working basic maneuvers. Everyone was humbling. Sarah, who'd graduated top of her class, who'd outflown an aggressor pilot, felt like a student pilot again, clumsy and overwhelmed. The landing was terrifying. The jet floated, then dropped, then floated again before Sarah finally got it on the runway with a thump that made her wince. In the debrief, Brick was blunt. That was rough. You're flying it like a T-38. The Raptor doesn't want to be wrestled, it wants to be finessed. You've got the aggression. Now you need the precision. Study tonight. We fly again tomorrow. The real challenge wasn't just the jet, it was the culture. Sarah was the only woman in her F-22 training class of 12 pilots. Most were professional, focused on their own struggles with the demanding aircraft. 2 were openly hostile. Captain Jake "Torch" Davidson made his opinion clear during their first Friday social at the officers' club. Sarah was nursing a beer, trying to blend in, when Torch's voice carried across the bar. I'm just saying, the Air Force has standards until it doesn't. Diversity hires dilute the community. His wingman, Captain Brad Spike Norton, laughed. Come on, man. Mitchell earned her slot. Did she check a box the Pentagon needed checked? Torch glanced at Sarah, making sure she heard. All I know is the Raptor community used to be sacred. Now it's a social experiment. Sarah set down her beer and walked out. Every instinct screamed to confront him, to defend herself. But she'd learned at the academy, reactions gave bullies power. Her flying would speak louder than any words. Week by week, Sarah's performance improved. Her instrument work became razor-sharp. Her tactical decision-making in simulated combat scenarios showed flashes of brilliance. She studied obsessively, technical orders, tactics manuals, combat reports from Raptor pilots who deployed to Syria and Iraq. During a complex four-ship tactical formation exercise, Sarah caught a critical error in the flight lead's plan, a gap in radar coverage that would leave them vulnerable to simulated enemy fighters. She mentioned it in the brief, politely but firmly. The flight lead, a major with 1,500 Raptor hours, studied the plan again. She's right. Good catch, 12. We'll adjust the formation spacing. After the brief, the major pulled Sarah aside. That kind of tactical awareness, that's what makes a good wingman. Keep it up. Small victories, incremental respect. The breakthrough came during a night flight in instrument meteorological conditions. IMC, flying blind in clouds with only instruments for reference. Sarah was flying as wingman to Torch, of all people. Their mission: intercept and escort a simulated high-value transport through hostile airspace at night, in weather, with simulated enemy fighters hunting them. 20 minutes into the mission, Torch's jet suffered an electrical malfunction. His primary flight instruments failed. No attitude indicator, no heading reference, navigation systems degraded. Flying IMC without instruments was a death sentence. Viper Ops: Torch is declaring an emergency. I've lost primary flight instruments, need vectors for recovery. His voice was strained, fear bleeding through the professional veneer. Sarah keyed her radio, calm and measured, the same voice she'd heard from the pilots in seat 12F when she was 7. Torch, 12 high, I've got you on my radar. I'll talk you through this. Trust me. 12 I'm. Torch, listen. Check your backup instruments. You should have standby attitude indicator and magnetic compass. Confirm. Yeah, I've got them. They're working. Good. I need you to match my heading, 315 degrees. Small turn to the left. Tell me when you're stabilized. For the next 20 minutes, Sarah flew formation on Torch while simultaneously navigating both jets back toward base, talking him through every adjustment, every heading change, every altitude correction. Her voice never wavered. Her instructions were precise, confident, perfectly timed. When they broke out of the clouds on final approach, base was lit up like a Christmas tree, emergency vehicles standing by. Torch landed first, Sarah right behind him. After shutdown, Torch found Sarah in the squadron. His face was pale, hands still shaking. Mitchell, you saved my life. If I'd tried to fly back alone in IMC with degraded instruments. He didn't finish the sentence. Sarah met his eyes. You would have done the same for me. Torch extended his hand. I was wrong about you, dead wrong. That was the most professional flying I've seen in, hell, maybe ever. Thank you. They shook hands. The next day, Torch told the entire squadron what happened. The story spread. The look Sarah received in the hallways changed. Less skepticism, more respect. Final check ride, June 2011. Pass and Sarah became a combat-ready F-22 pilot. Fail and she'd be reassigned, her dream shattered. The evaluator was Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Reaper Williams, a legendary pilot who'd flown F-15s in Desert Storm, transitioned to the Raptor, and become known as the hardest evaluator in the entire F-22 community. His failure rate was 30%. He accepted no excuses, tolerated no mistakes, and had once failed a major with 800 Raptor hours for a single procedural error. The brief was short. Captain Mitchell, this is a tactical employment evaluation. You'll lead a two-ship against multiple simulated threats. Surface-to-air missiles, enemy fighters, radar jamming, all of it. I'll be flying your wing, but I'll also be evaluating your decision-making, your communication, your tactical awareness, and your ability to employ the F-22 in a complex combat environment. Standard is perfect. Anything less is failure. Questions? No, sir. Then let's see what 12 High can do. The mission was a nightmare. Every simulation Sarah had trained for, compressed into one 90-minute flight. She led her flight through simulated enemy air defenses, outmaneuvered 2 flights of aggressor aircraft, protected a high-value asset, and successfully prosecuted targets, all while managing fuel, communicating with multiple agencies, and keeping Reaper, who deliberately made several mistakes to test her leadership, from getting killed. When they landed, Sarah was drenched in sweat, mentally exhausted, hands trembling from adrenaline. The debrief lasted 2 hours. Reaper dissected every decision, every radio call, every tactical choice. His face revealed nothing. Finally, he closed his grade book. Captain Mitchell, that was a 96%, one of the highest scores I've given in 5 years. He stood, extended his hand. Welcome to the Raptor community. You've earned it. Sarah shook his hand, fighting tears. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me, thank yourself. You did the work. Reaper paused at the door. And Mitchell, that call sign 12 High, it fits. High risk, high reward flying. Use that aggression wisely in combat. It'll either make you legendary or get you killed. Don't let it be the latter. That night, Sarah called her mother. Mom, I did it. I'm a Raptor pilot. Linda Mitchell sobbed with pride. My baby, my brilliant baby, I knew you could. Sarah sat on her bed in her small apartment off base, staring at her new assignment, 27th Fighter Squadron, Langley Air Force Base, Virginia. Operational F-22 Squadron. Combat ready. From Seat 12F to the cockpit of the world's deadliest fighter jet. The impossible dream was real. Al Dhafra Air Base, United Arab Emirates. March 2015. The desert sun turned the flight line into a shimmering oven. Captain Sarah, 12 High Mitchell, walked her pre-flight inspection on Tail 87, her assigned F-22 for this deployment. 6 months into Operation Inherent Resolve, the air campaign against ISIS in Syria and Iraq, and the routine had become familiar. Brief at 300, launch at 500, 8 hours of patrol over hostile territory. Land exhausted, debrief, sleep, repeat. But tonight's mission was different. Sarah sat in the Squadron Ops Center, studying the mission brief on the plasma screen. Intelligence photos showed the Syrian-Iraqi border region, a lawless no-man's land controlled by ISIS fighters who'd proven willing to shoot at anything with wings. Major Tom Sledge Patterson, her flight lead, a veteran with 1,200 Raptor hours and 3 combat deployments, stood at the front of the room. Okay, listen up. We've got 2 Pave Hawk helicopters attempting a combat search and rescue. Yesterday, an Army helicopter was shot down by small arms fire. 2 crew members survived, Warrant Officer James Rodriguez and Sergeant First Class Maria Chen. They've been evading for 18 hours, wounded, running out of water. Sarah leaned forward. This wasn't a routine patrol, this was real. 12 and I will provide top cover for the rescue package, Sledge continued. 2 rescue birds, 4 crew members each, plus the survivors makes 14 souls depending on us. Expected threats: small arms, heavy machine guns, possible MANPADS, man-portable air defense systems. Row is clear. Protect the rescue package at all costs. Questions? A young captain raised his hand. Sir, what if we encounter Syrian or Russian aircraft? We won't. They've been notified this is a humanitarian mission. They've agreed to stay clear. Sledge's expression was grim. But ISIS doesn't care about agreements. They'll throw everything they have at those helicopters. Our job is to make sure nothing gets through. The launch was routine. Sarah and Sledge took off in darkness, refueled over Iraq from a KC-135 tanker, then pushed east toward the Syrian border. Sarah flew at 25,000 feet, sensors scanning, her jet invisible to everything below. 12 Sledge, picture clean, no airborne threats. Sledge's voice was calm, professional. 12 copies. Below them, the rescue helicopters, call sign Rescue 1 and Rescue 2, flew at 200 feet, using terrain to mask their approach. Sarah watched their progress on her tactical display, her stomach tight with tension. Sledge, 12, I've got multiple vehicle signatures, 3 kilometers north of the survivor position. Sarah designated the targets with her targeting pod. The infrared image showed trucks with mounted weapons racing toward the downed airmen. Sledge copies, you're cleared hot on the northern convoy. Sarah rolled inverted, pulled through to wings level pointing at the ground and designated the lead truck. The GBU-39 small diameter bomb, a 250-pound precision weapon, dropped clean from her internal bay. 15 seconds later, the truck erupted in a ball of fire. The convoy scattered, trucks racing for cover. Good hit 12, convoy is stopped. But Sarah's tactical display was lighting up with new contacts, more vehicles converging on the area. ISIS fighters weren't running, they were massing for a fight. Sledge is Winchester on air to ground. Sledge's voice was tight. 12, you've got the store. Sarah checked her weapons. 2 GBU-39s remaining. 2 bombs to protect 2 helicopters and 14 lives against an unknown number of enemy fighters. The math wasn't good. All aircraft Rescue 1 were inbound to the survivor position, 2 mics out. The helicopter pilot's voice crackled with static and stress. Sarah orbited overhead, watching the rescue helicopters close on the survivor's location, a dried riverbed surrounded by buildings and vegetation. Perfect terrain for an ambush. Rescue 1, be advised, multiple threats in your 12 o'clock, buildings at grid November, Tango 4729. Rescue 1 copies, we see, taking fire, taking fire. Tracers reached up from the buildings like angry fireflies. Sarah heard the distinctive crack of heavy machine guns. The helicopters broke formation, one banking hard left, the other right. 12 high, Rescue 1, we're pinned. Heavy fire from building complex, we cannot land. Request immediate support. The pilot's voice was strained, professional fear bleeding through. Sarah designated the building complex with her targeting pod. The problem was immediately clear. Friendly forces, the downed airmen, were less than 200 meters from the target building, well within the blast radius of her 250-pound bombs. The book said don't take the shot, danger close, risk of fratricide. But the helicopters couldn't land, the survivors were dying, and Sarah had seconds to decide. Rescue 1, 12 high, I need you to stay masked behind that ridgeline. Weapon inbound, time on target 20 seconds. Do not, repeat, do not expose yourself until I call clear. Rescue 1 copies, staying masked. Sarah rolled in steeper than procedure recommended, descending through 15,000 feet at 450 knots. She switched her bomb to manual guidance mode, putting the precision entirely on her eyes and hands. The targeting pipper danced on her HUD. She adjusted, corrected for wind, for descent rate, for the angle of attack. At 8,000 feet, she pickled the weapon. The GBU-39 separated clean, guided by GPS and her laser designation. Sarah pulled hard, 7GS pressing her into the seat, climbing back to altitude. Weapon away, 15 seconds. The building exploded in a precise eruption of concrete and fire. Secondary explosions followed, ammunition cooking off. The machine gun fire stopped. Rescue 1 is moving in. Sarah circled overhead, watching the infrared feed as the helicopters landed. Personnel rushed to the survivors, loaded them aboard. 90 seconds on the ground, an eternity under fire. Rescue 1 and 2 are clear. Survivors aboard extracting now. But Sarah's threat warning system screamed, "Sam, launch." 12 break right, missile in the air. Sledge's voice was urgent. Sarah didn't think. She reacted on pure training, hard right turn, afterburners deploying chaff and flares. The missile tracked her heat signature, closing at Mach 3. Sarah pulled 8 GS, vision graying at the edges, fighting to stay conscious. The proximity fuse detonated 300 feet behind her jet. Shrapnel peppered the tail section. Warning lights flickered. 12's hit, checking systems. Sarah's voice was surprisingly calm despite her heart trying to hammer through her chest. She scanned her instruments. Minor damage controllable. 12's okay, returning to station. Rescue package is clear of the area, Sledge called. All aircraft, egress to the south, mission complete. The debrief at Al Dafra was surreal. Sarah sat in her sweat-soaked flight suit, hands still trembling from adrenaline, watching gun camera footage of her bomb impact. Perfect hit. The building vaporized. The survivors rescued. Squadron Commander Lieutenant Colonel James Hammer Davidson reviewed the footage in silence. Finally, Captain Mitchell, that was some of the finest weapons employment under pressure I've witnessed in this entire campaign. Textbook execution in conditions that were anything but textbook. 2 months later, the citation arrived. The President of the United States takes pleasure in presenting the Distinguished Flying Cross to Captain Sarah J. Mitchell, United States Air Force, for extraordinary achievement while participating in aerial flight. The medal ceremony was held at Al Dafra. Sarah stood at attention while the citation was read, describing her actions that night. When Hammer pinned the medal to her flight suit, he whispered, "Rodriguez and Chen are alive because of you. 14 people came home because of you. Never forget that." Later, Sarah visited the hospital where Rodriguez and Chen were recovering before being medevaced to Landstuhl. Rodriguez, a 26-year-old pilot from Texas, had a shattered leg and burns on his arms. Chen, a 32-year-old flight engineer and mother of 2, had taken shrapnel to her shoulder. "Captain Mitchell," Rodriguez said, struggling to salute from his bed, "they told us what you did, that bomb you dropped. We heard it, felt the shock wave, thought we were dead. Then the shooting stopped and the helicopters came in." Chen grabbed Sarah's hand. "I have 2 daughters, 6 and 8. I'm going to see them again because of you. Thank you doesn't even come close." Sarah felt tears burning her eyes. "You would have done the same." "Maybe, but you actually did it," Rodriguez smiled. 12 high, right? That's your call sign." "Yes." "Well, 12 high just became a legend in Army aviation. When my daughter asks what I did in the war, I'm going to tell her about the Air Force captain who saved my life." That night, Sarah sat alone on the roof of her quarters, staring at the desert stars. The Distinguished Flying Cross felt heavy in her pocket, not from its physical weight, but from what it represented. She'd taken a life to save lives, made split-second decisions that could have gone horribly wrong, experienced combat in a way that training could never prepare you for. Her phone buzzed. An email from Air Force personnel. "Captain Mitchell, you have been selected for a staff assignment at the Pentagon Joint Staff J-8 Directorate. Report date, September 2017. The Pentagon, a desk job, everything Sarah hated. But the email continued. "This assignment is a critical step for officers being groomed for squadron command. Your combat record and tactical expertise are needed at the strategic level. Squadron command. The dream beyond the dream, leading 60 pilots, shaping the next generation of fighter aviation." Sarah looked at the stars, the same stars she'd seen from her father's base in San Diego when she was 7. The same stars she'd navigated by during countless combat missions. From C-12F to combat hero. And now to the Pentagon to learn how to lead. The journey wasn't over. It was just changing altitude. The Pentagon, September 2017. Major Sarah Mitchell, hated everything about it. The building was a maze of identical corridors, fluorescent lights, and endless conference rooms where careers were made and destroyed in PowerPoint presentations. Sarah's office in the Joint Staff J8 Directorate, Force Structure, Resources, and Assessment, was a windowless cube she shared with two other majors. Her combat decorations looked absurd on the wall next to a 3-year-old calendar and a broken coffee maker. She'd gone from flying the world's most advanced fighter jet to writing briefings about budget allocations. "It's purgatory," she told her mother during a Sunday phone call. "I'm a fighter pilot, not a policy analyst." Linda Mitchell's voice was gentle but firm. "Baby, you didn't get this assignment by accident. They're preparing you for something bigger. Or they're warehousing me until I get frustrated and quit." Sarah Jane Mitchell, "I did not raise a quitter. You remember what Master Sergeant Williams told you." Sarah sighed. "The door's not locked." "That's right, so stop complaining and figure out why you're there." The answer came 3 months later, during a joint service meeting about the future of air superiority. Sarah was the most junior officer in the room, a major among colonels, generals, and admirals. Her job was simple: take notes, stay silent, look professional. The meeting was a budget battle disguised as strategic planning. The Navy wanted funding for Super Hornet upgrades. The Air Force was defending the F-22 program against critics who called it too expensive, too specialized, too limited in production. Then Admiral Richard Prescott, a 3-star who commanded Naval Air Forces Pacific, dropped his bomb. "Gentlemen, let's be honest. The F-22 is an overpriced hangar queen that hasn't proven itself in peer combat. We're spending billions maintaining an aircraft that's never faced a real adversary. Meanwhile, the Navy's carrier air wings provide flexible, combat-proven power projection." The Air Force colonel sitting next to Sarah shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Sarah's boss, a brigadier general, looked down at his notes. The silence stretched. Sarah's hand moved before her brain could stop it. She raised her pen. The meeting chairman, a 2-star Army general, blinked in surprise. "Yes, Major." "Mitchell, sir. F-22 pilot, 500 combat hours over Syria and Iraq." Admiral Prescott's eyes narrowed. "You have something to add, Major." Every instinct screamed at Sarah to back down. You don't contradict admirals. You don't speak out of turn in joint meetings. You don't risk your career on principle. But she thought about Kevin Martinez, about Rodriguez and Chen, about every sortie she'd flown where the F-22's capabilities had prevented a fight before it started. "Yes, sir. Respectfully, the F-22 has proven itself in the most decisive way possible, by ensuring adversaries won't even contest the airspace." Sarah's voice was steady, professional. "In every theater where Raptors deploy, enemy aircraft stay on the ground. Enemy air defenses go silent. That's not a hangar queen, Admiral. That's deterrence. Success isn't measured by kills. It's measured by conflicts that never happen because the adversary knows they can't win." The room was silent. You could hear the ventilation system. Sarah continued, knowing she was either ending her career or defining it. "The Navy's carrier air wings are exceptional for power projection, but air superiority, controlling the high ground, denying the enemy any ability to operate, that's what the F-22 provides. We don't see peer combat because peer adversaries look at the Raptor's capabilities and choose not to fight. That's not a weakness, sir. That's strategic success." Admiral Prescott leaned back, studying her. The tension was excruciating. Then he smiled. "And you are?" "Major Sarah Mitchell, sir. The first female F-22 pilot to receive the Distinguished Flying Cross." Sarah hesitated. "I wasn't aware that was public, sir." "It was announced this morning. Congratulations, Major." Prescott's expression shifted to something like respect. "And for the record, you're absolutely right about deterrence. I was testing to see if anyone in this room had the spine to defend their platform." He looked at the Air Force officers. Most of you were ready to concede the point without a fight. This major just taught you something about advocacy. After the meeting, Sarah's boss pulled her aside in the hallway. Brigadier General Frank Morrison looked furious. Major Mitchell, you do not contradict flag officers in joint meetings. You could have derailed. General Morrison, a moment please. The voice belonged to General Thomas Harris, the Air Force Chief of Staff, a four-star who'd flown F-15s in Desert Storm. Sarah snapped to attention. General Harris smiled slightly. Relax, Major, walk with me. They walked in silence for 30 seconds. Then, Major Mitchell, I've been watching your career. Combat record, exemplary. Tactical expertise, top tier. Willingness to speak truth to power. He glanced at her. Apparently also top tier. That was either very brave or very stupid. Sir, It was brave. The Admiral was right. He was testing the room. You were the only one who passed. They stopped at a window overlooking the Pentagon courtyard. How much do you know about command selection? Sarah's heart rate spiked. Sir, I know it's competitive, requires combat experience, demonstrated leadership and the ability to make hard decisions under pressure, to advocate for your people, to stand up when it matters. Harris turned to face her. Major Mitchell, you're being considered for squadron command. 27th Fighter Squadron, Langley Air Force Base, F-22s. Sarah couldn't breathe. Sir, I'd be the first. First female F-22 squadron commander. Yes, the media will make it about that. Don't let them. Make it about excellence. Make it about mission success. Make it about leading the finest fighter squadron in the United States Air Force. Harris's expression turned serious. This won't be easy. Some of your pilots will question whether you earned the position. Some will assume you're a diversity pick. Can you handle that? Sarah thought about Mrs. Henderson, about Torch Davidson, about every person who doubted her for 20 years. I can handle it, sir. Good, the official announcement is next month. Start preparing. You'll take command in January. Harris extended his hand. Congratulations, Lieutenant Colonel Select Mitchell. Don't make me regret this. The announcement hit the news cycle like a bomb. Breaking barriers. First woman to command F-22 squadron. Female fighter pilot shatters glass ceiling. Air Force appoints historic commander. Sarah's phone exploded with interview requests. CNN, Fox News, NPR, the New York Times, everyone wanted the story. The trailblazer, the pioneer, the symbol. Sarah declined them all. Instead, she issued a single statement through Air Force Public Affairs. I'm honored to be selected for command based on my qualifications and combat record. I look forward to leading the exceptional men and women of the 27th Fighter Squadron. Our focus will be on mission readiness and operational excellence. Her mentor, now retired Colonel Patricia Richardson, called that night. Smart move, dodging the media circus. I'm not a story, ma'am. I'm a fighter pilot. Richardson laughed. You're both, whether you like it or not. But here's the reality. You take command in 3 months. You'll have 60 pilots, 300 personnel, and a mission that never sleeps. Some of those pilots will be thrilled to serve under you. Others will be waiting for you to fail. How are you going to handle it? Sarah was quiet for a moment. The same way I've handled everything else. Fly well, lead well, let the work speak. Good answer, but Sarah, Richardson's voice turned serious. Command is different than flying. In the cockpit, you control everything. In command, you can't. You'll make decisions that affect people's careers, their families, their lives. You'll send people into harm's way knowing some might not come back. That weight never gets easier. How did you handle it? By remembering that leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. About making the best decision you can with the information you have, about taking care of your people especially when it's hard. Richardson paused. You're ready for this, Sarah. Trust yourself. December 2020, 1 week before taking command. Sarah stood in her new office at Langley Air Force Base. staring at the empty desk that would soon be hers. The 27th Fighter Squadron's heritage covered the walls, photos of previous commanders, combat deployments, squadron patches from decades of operations. She'd spent the past 3 months preparing. She'd studied every regulation, every policy, every lesson learned from previous commanders. She'd talked to mentors, read leadership books, and war-gamed scenarios until her brain hurt. But standing in that office, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt since her first Raptor flight: genuine fear. What if she failed? What if the squadron fell apart under her leadership? What if she proved every skeptic right? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Call Mitchell, this is CW4 James Rodriguez. Heard about your command selection. The pilot you saved in Syria is now flying again because of you. Go show them what 12 High can do. Hooah, Rodriguez." Sarah smiled, tears stinging her eyes. Another text, this one from Master Sergeant Williams. "The door was never locked, Mitchell. You've been walking through doors for 15 years. This is just another one. Proud of you. Now go lead." January 4th, 2021. Change of command ceremony. The hangar was packed, squadron personnel, visiting dignitaries, media representatives recording the historic moment. Sarah stood in her dress blues, waiting for her name to be called. The outgoing commander, Lieutenant Colonel David Chen, gave his farewell speech, thanking his airmen, reflecting on 2 years of leadership. Then it was time. "Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell." Sarah walked to the podium. 60 pilots sat in the front rows, mostly men, mostly veterans, all watching her with expressions ranging from genuine welcome to barely concealed skepticism. In the back row, she spotted a captain with his arms crossed, jaw tight, clearly unhappy. Sarah gripped the podium and began. "Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell, your new commander. Some of you are wondering if I'm qualified for this position based on my gender. Others are wondering if I'm a diversity pick, a political statement, a social experiment." The room was completely silent. "Let me be clear, I didn't ask to be the first anything. I asked to be a fighter pilot. I asked to be qualified. I asked to lead. Whether I meet your expectations isn't determined by my gender or politics, it's determined by results." Sarah looked directly at the skeptical captain in the back. "This squadron will maintain combat readiness. We will execute our mission flawlessly. We will take care of each other. And when we deploy, and we will deploy, you will have a commander who's flown in combat, who's made life-and-death decisions, who knows what it means to bring everyone home. Those are my standards. Those are my expectations." She paused, letting the words sink in. "If you have a problem with that, my door is open. If you have a problem with me being a woman, I suggest you get over it, because I'm not going anywhere." Sarah stepped back from the podium. "Let's get to work." The applause was mixed, some enthusiastic, some polite, some clearly forced. But as Sarah walked out of that hangar, carrying the weight of command on her shoulders, she thought about Seat 12F, about the 7-year-old girl who'd watched pilots save a flight. That girl had become one of those pilots. And now she was leading them. Langley Air Force Base, Virginia, March 2021. The first 6 months of command tested Sarah in ways combat never had. Flying the F-22 was straightforward, physics, tactics, training. But leading 60 pilots with different personalities, egos, and baggage while maintaining combat readiness, that was infinitely more complex. Lieutenant Jake "Razor" Thompson, the skeptical captain from the change of command ceremony, became Sarah's first real test. During a routine training mission, Razor made a critical tactical error that left his wingman exposed to simulated enemy fire. In the debrief, Sarah addressed it directly but professionally. "Razor, walk me through your decision at time hack 14:30. Why did you break left instead of maintaining formation?" Razor's jaw tightened. "I assessed the threat and reacted." You reacted without communicating with your wingman. He had no idea you were breaking, which left him defensive and vulnerable. In combat, that gets people killed. With all due respect, ma'am, I've been flying Raptors for 6 years. I know how to. Razor. Sarah's voice was calm but carried steel. I don't care if you've been flying for 6 years or 16. In this squadron we communicate, we coordinate, and we don't leave our wingmen exposed. Is that clear? The room was silent. Razor's face flushed. Yes, ma'am. After the debrief, Sarah pulled him aside privately. Jake, I need to know, is your problem with my feedback, or with the fact that I'm the one giving it? Razor looked at the floor. Finally, I didn't think you'd earned this command. I thought it was political, a statement. And now I think maybe I should shut up and see what kind of commander you actually are before I decide. Sarah nodded. That's all I ask. Judge me on results, nothing else. The turning point came during Red Flag, the Air Force's premier combat training exercise at Nellis Air Force Base, Nevada. Red Flag was where fighter squadrons proved themselves against the most realistic combat scenarios the Air Force could create. Advanced enemy fighters, sophisticated air defenses, electronic warfare, all compressed into 2 weeks of intensive flying. Sarah's squadron was tasked with achieving air superiority against a simulated near-peer adversary, Russian-style tactics, S-400 surface-to-air missile systems, Su-35 threat simulators flown by the Air Force's best aggressor pilots. The first mission was a disaster. Sarah's flight leads played too conservatively, trying to minimize risk instead of exploiting the F-22's advantages. They lost 3 jets in the simulation, failed to achieve air dominance, and the friendly ground forces took heavy casualties. That night's debrief was brutal. Sarah stood at the front of the room, gun camera footage showing their failures on loop. That was unacceptable. Her voice cut through the silence. We flew like we were afraid of the jet, afraid of the adversary, afraid of making mistakes. The F-22 isn't a defensive aircraft, it's a predator, and we just flew it like prey. Major Tom Sledge Patterson, her former flight lead from combat, now one of her senior pilots, raised his hand. Boss, the air defenses were incredibly dense. If we'd been aggressive, we would have. We would have used the F-22 stealth to get inside their decision cycle, which is exactly what the jet was designed to do. Sarah pulled up a tactical display. Tomorrow's mission, we're changing the plan. Instead of staying outside the threat ring and playing safe, we're going deep. We'll use terrain masking here, electronic attack to suppress their radars here, and a force ship will penetrate directly into their air defense bubble. Razor spoke up. Ma'am, that's incredibly aggressive, high risk. Sarah looked at him. High risk, high reward. That's what 12 high means, Razor. And tomorrow I'm leading the force ship personally. Who's with me? The room erupted. Hands shot up. Even Razor volunteered. The mission brief at 300 the next morning was electric with nervous energy. Sarah's plan was audacious. 4 F-22s would penetrate deep into enemy territory, using their stealth and superior situational awareness to destroy the enemy's command and control nodes, while drawing their fighters into a trap where the rest of the squadron could eliminate them. This works if we trust each other and trust the jet, Sarah said. Communicate constantly, don't freelance, and if things go sideways, we adapt together. Questions? None, just determined faces. Sarah led the force ship, Razor on her wing, Sledge leading the second element, into the simulated battle space at dawn. They flew at 40,000 feet, sensors passive, completely invisible to the enemy radars below. 12 picture clean, proceeding to phase line Alpha, Sarah called calmly. They pushed deeper into enemy territory than any previous Red Flag mission had attempted. The enemy fighters launched, searching for them, but couldn't find them. The S-400 radars swept the sky uselessly. 12's in position. Sledge, Execute Alpha strike on command and control nodes. Sledge copies, rifles. Simulated missiles away, destroying enemy ground control. The enemy formation fell into chaos, their coordination broken. Sarah's trap snapped shut, the rest of her squadron, positioned perfectly, engaged from beyond visual range. In 6 minutes, the enemy lost 12 aircraft without scoring a single simulated kill against Sarah's forces. Mission complete, perfect execution. When they landed, the Red Flag commander, a brigadier general who'd run the exercise for 3 years, was waiting on the ramp. Colonel Mitchell, that was the most impressive employment of fifth-generation tactics I've witnessed at Red Flag. Your plan, your execution, your leadership, textbook perfect. Well done. But Sarah turned to her squadron. We did this together. Every jet, every pilot, every decision. That's how we fight. That night at the debrief, Razor approached Sarah privately. Ma'am, I owe you an apology. I doubted you. I was wrong. What you did today, the way you led, the trust you showed in us, that's the kind of commander I want to follow. Sarah extended her hand. We're good, Razor. Now help me make sure everyone in this squadron flies like that every single time. Back at Langley, the squadron transformed. The skepticism evaporated, replaced by fierce loyalty. Sarah's pilots flew harder, pushed farther, and supported each other like family. When a young female lieutenant named Emma Vasquez joined the squadron, one of only 4 women, Sarah saw her own uncertainty reflected in the younger pilot's eyes. Lieutenant Vasquez, my office. Emma stood at attention nervously. Yes, ma'am. Relax, this isn't about your performance, you're doing fine. I wanted to check in. How are you settling in? Emma hesitated. Honestly, ma'am, it's intimidating, being one of the only women following in your footsteps, feeling like I have to be perfect. Sarah smiled. You know what I'm going to tell you? That I need to be twice as good to be seen as equal. No, I'm going to tell you to fly well and lead well. That's it. The barrier-breaking stuff, the first woman headlines, that's noise. What matters is whether you're ready when your wingman needs you, whether you can make the right decision under pressure, whether you can lead when it's your turn. But don't you feel the pressure of being a symbol? Every day, but here's what I learned, I can't control what I represent to other people. I can only control whether I do my job with excellence, so that's what I focus on. Sarah leaned forward. Emma, you're not here because you're a woman, you're here because you earned it. Don't let anyone, including yourself, convince you otherwise. Summer 2023. Sarah sat for an Air Force documentary about the evolution of fighter aviation. The interviewer asked the inevitable question, what's it like being a trailblazer for women in combat aviation? Sarah smiled. She'd answered this question 100 times, but she'd refined her answer. I'll tell you what I told a little girl who wrote me last month. She asked if being a female pilot was hard. I said, being a pilot is hard. Being a combat leader is hard. Gender is just one of many challenges you'll face, and it's not the hardest one. The hardest is maintaining excellence when everyone expects you to fail. The documentary included footage of Sarah leading a 4-ship formation, her call sign 12 high on the radio, coordinating a complex intercept with the precision she'd spent 15 years perfecting. Her pilots responded instantly, no hesitation, only trust. One sequence showed her in the squadron, mentoring a young captain through a difficult tactical decision. Another showed her flying wing for one of her newest pilots, providing coaching over the radio. The final shot was Sarah walking the flight line at sunset, 4 F-22s behind her, her shadow long across the tarmac. October 2023, Miramar Air Base, California. Sarah was attending a conference when she found herself with a free afternoon. Almost without thinking, she drove to the base, badged through the gate, and made her way to the flight line fence where she'd stood 18 years ago. The base had changed. New buildings, new jets, F-35s now instead of F-A-18s, But the fence was the same. The thunder of jets was the same. A little girl stood nearby with her father, a Marine Corps staff sergeant. The girl, maybe 8 years old, had her hands wrapped around the chain-link fence, eyes glued to an F-35 taxiing past. Sarah walked over, drawn by something she couldn't quite name. "Pretty impressive, huh?" Sarah said gently. The girl nodded without looking away from the jet. "My teacher said girls can't be fighter pilots." The father looked embarrassed. "Emma, that's not." "What's your name?" Sarah asked, kneeling down to the girl's level. "Emma." "Well, Emma, I'm Sarah, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell. My call sign is 12 High, and I command a squadron of F-22 Raptors, the fastest, most advanced fighters in the world." Emma's eyes went wide. She finally looked at Sarah, taking in the flight suit, the squadron patch, the wings on her chest. You fly those?" "I fly them, I command them, and I teach other pilots how to fly them." Sarah smiled. "And you know where it all started? I was 7 years old, sitting in seat 12F on an airplane, watching the pilots save our flight during an emergency. I decided right then that I wanted to be in the front seat." "Did people tell you that you couldn't?" "Every single day, for 20 years. But you did it anyway." Sarah stood, looking up at the F-35 as it rotated and climbed into the California sky, afterburners painting the sunset orange. "I did it anyway, not because I'm special, Emma, because I worked harder than everyone who doubted me, because I refused to accept no as an answer, because I learned that the only limits that matter are the ones you accept for yourself." Emma's father extended his hand. "Thank you, Colonel," she needed to hear that. Sarah shook it, then looked back at Emma one more time. "When you're old enough, Emma, maybe I'll see you in a cockpit. The Air Force can always use more pilots who refuse to listen when someone says you can't." She walked back to her rental car, but paused when her phone buzzed. An email from Air Force Personnel Center. "LT Call Mitchell, you have been selected for consideration. Experimental Test Pilot School, Edwards AFB. Next Generation Stealth Fighter Programs. Interview scheduled for November." Sarah looked back at the fence line. At Emma, still staring at the sky with possibility in her eyes. At the jets screaming overhead. At the sunset painting everything gold. She thought about seat 12F, about a terrified 7-year-old who'd watched pilots stay calm in a crisis. About Mrs. Henderson saying, "Be realistic." About her father saying, "That's just how it is." About every obstacle, every doubt, every person who'd said she couldn't. She thought about Kevin Martinez, who'd never gotten the chance to finish his journey. About Rodriguez and Chen, alive because of split-second decisions. About Razor and Emma Vasquez and all the pilots she'd led who now led others. Sarah opened her email and typed a response. "I'm interested, send me the details, let's fly." She hit send and smiled. From seat 12F to the cockpit of the world's most advanced fighter. From student to warrior to commander. From impossible dream to living legacy. The little girl who'd been told, "That's just how it is," had spent 20 years proving that's not how it had to be. And somewhere right now, another little girl was standing at a fence, watching jets scream into the sky, dreaming impossible dreams. Sarah's call sign, 12 High, was no longer just a name. It was a promise. A reminder that the front seat was never as far away as it seemed. You just had to refuse to stay in 12F.